Today, we are going to talk about Grenada in the 80s. This presentation is brought to you by Richard Mann. The picture on screen is not an accurate portrayal of Grenada in the 80s. Like many Latin American countries in the late 70s, early 80s, Grenada was unstable and going through extreme military and governmental changes. In this picture, we see former Prime Minister Maurice Bishop flanked by Daniel Ortega, the Nicaraguan president, and Fidel Castro, our enemy and leader of Cuba. It was events such as these that made President Reagan well aware of the growing tension and trouble rising in Grenada. On top of meetings and dealings like these, Maurice Bishop also hired Cuban workers to build an airstrip in Grenada. President Reagan and his committee felt the ominous and ever-encroaching shadow of communism slowly rising in Latin America. Reagan and his committee feared that this airstrip was going to be used to bring in Cuban forces and weapons into Grenada. Reagan, now searching for reasons to intervene, cited the 800 medical students that were stationed in Grenada were in grave and imminent danger. Many people believe that Reagan used the invasion of Grenada to draw attention away from the bombings in Beirut that claimed the lives of 241 Marines. However, contrary to popular belief, Reagan had already all but approved the invasion of Grenada. On October 25, 1983, American land, air, and sea assets bombarded the shores of Grenada and subdued the Cuban workers and military that were stationed. After only a few days of fighting, all opposition forces were defeated and all Cubans were returned to the shores of Havana. President Reagan's suspicions were confirmed when a large weapons cache enough to arm 10,000 men was discovered on Grenada. So, how did we impact this now ravished and war-torn country? After the war was over and the dust had settled, Grenada flourished. Bernard Cord, the corrupt prime minister, was arrested and sentenced to death. Later, his sentence was commuted to life. In the midst of skepticism and criticism from all forms of government officials and humanitarians around the world, Reagan decided to answer with a funny note. Keeping in mind that Grenada is the world's leading producer and distributor of nutmeg, he says, "You can't make a good cup of eggnog without nutmeg." Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something, and this has been my presentation on the U.S. involvement in Grenada during the 80s.